What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you through the ultimate guide to the upcoming Game Week 4. So we are progressing through this international break at a pretty slow pace, so I decided to give us a quick look at Game Week 4 and the questions around it. Now if you guys haven't watched one of these ultimate guide videos, I'll start off with a stats review, looking at the past as well as the future clean sheet odds as well as projected goals. Then the big talking point this week is, should you wildcard in Game Week 4 or is another game week better? So I'll be running through my own wildcard plan. Then as we always do to wrap up is going to be the captaincy debate, should you go for Mo Salah or Erling Haaland? Now I just want to say that I'm recording this a little bit earlier than usual. Unfortunately I'm having to travel and therefore pre-record videos, but don't worry, the stats don't lie and those won't change. The one thing that might change though is the injury debate. We've already seen some international break injuries to Cole Palmer, Ollie Watkins and Phil Foden. I'm pretty sure those players are going to be fine for Game Week 4, but just one to monitor. But I will address those in my team selection coming up closer to the deadline. Don't really have too many kind of player debates in this ultimate guide. So if you guys want to see the talking points relating to Game Week 4 as well as the stats, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So going over the team stats to start us off, attacking and defensive numbers, I'll be going over the top 6 teams as well as the bottom 6. Now just a reminder, only 3 game weeks of data is a very small sample size, so don't take these too seriously, but it's always nice to see which teams start off the season quite well. Now let's go over the attacking numbers first. In terms of XG on penalty, I prefer the non-penalty variant, but there haven't been many penalties anyways this Premier League season. Quite a big drop off from the prior seasons. Now these are also per 90 minutes for both the attacking and defensive numbers. So the top 6 attacks over the opening 3 game weeks are Liverpool, Bournemouth, Man City, Chelsea, Brighton, and finally Brentford. These will be quite fixture dependent as we've only had 3 weeks of data. Now no surprise there that Liverpool attack has been red hot. 2.6 XG per game is simply outstanding, and that's why as a non-Salah owner, I'm looking to bring him in this week or next week. Their fixtures have been pretty easy and therefore consider that, but I still feel like this attack will continue this in the upcoming game weeks. The interesting one for me is going to be Bournemouth at 2.35. Those numbers are pretty surprising, so should we be looking at some other attackers like a Semenyo who's cheap? I guess if you guys are on a wildcard, you might want to look at him. 5.5 is a pretty good price if they keep up these attacking numbers. Then also no surprise team Man City with 2.1. I mean back-to-back haddies for Erling Haaland, the XG had to be there, but he is quite an elite finisher. Now I can't really say much about Man City because at the current moment it's Erling Haaland or bust. Don't really like their other attacking options. Then next up, Chelsea, a team that is scoring for fun at the current moment. Luckily, Henderson stopped them with a few saves in Game Week 3. But a Cole Palmer should be high on your list because the fixtures haven't been that great, but they do get better. I mean, when you consider the fact that they had Man City in Game Week 1, where they didn't score a lot of XG, they've been great in the last 2 game weeks. The only slight problem, of course, is the rotation with all those attackers at the moment, and that's why for me it's Cole Palmer or maybe skip over them. Now those bottom 2 teams are where your budget enablers as well as your mid-price options are going to come from. Brighton and Brentford are putting up some good numbers. So I personally am looking to bring in a João Pedro in my forward department, and I know Mbeumo is a great option if you're on a wild card. Probably want to miss their next game though against Man City in Game Week 4, but after that I'm going to jump on that Mbeumo bandwagon. So definitely look at these 6 teams if you're looking for some attacking transfers in. But now let's go over the worst teams. Now the reason I'm going to go over these squads is the fact that if your defenders are playing them, the transfer clean sheet should be quite strong, starting off with Ipswich at 0.42. Now I just want to put this out there that they have faced Man City as well as Liverpool, so Ipswich definitely the toughest fixtures, so a little bit of an expectation that they would be on the bottom. Otherwise Leicester, newly promoted side as well, there's an expectation. Hopefully Henderson finally keeps a clean sheet in Game Week 4. We do have actually Crystal Palace next up, so this game could have no goals in it. As an Eze owner, I wish they put up a bit more XG. Seems like my team is not doing really well with Muniz at Fulham, and even with Isaac for Newcastle, most of my attackers have low XG numbers. So that might be a call for the wildcard on its own. Hopefully these teams can improve, but all have started the season quite slowly. Everton, another one there that you guys should also look out for, not really attacking that great. So Villa defender might be quite popular for the upcoming game week. But once again, these numbers are only for 3 game weeks of data, but I like to take a look at who started the season well and who's struggling. Now let's go over the defensive numbers, starting off with the expected clean sheets for our best defenses, and Liverpool have really started the season off well. So 0.53 per game over the opening 3, and they're followed by Nottingham Forest, Man City, Spurs, Fulham, and finally Chelsea. So that Spurs defense I can't really vouch for. As a Pedro Porro owner, he hasn't done that well, and with their upcoming game against Arsenal, I think that expected clean sheets will go down. But does this give you some food for thought for this upcoming game, and should I start Pedro Porro instead of a Gabriel? That Fulham defense also looking pretty strong, but just remember, they have had Ipswich and Leicester back-to-back, so their numbers are probably going to decrease over the upcoming game weeks. Nottingham Forest also a pretty strong defense. They have Liverpool up next though, so probably a similar situation. Shout out to Man City, very strong numbers but can't keep a clean sheet. It's just that Edison tax. Then I guess if you can predict for Chelsea who's going to start in that defense, there could be some good cheap enablers. But if you're that Liverpool defense, if you're on a wild card, could you go for the Robbo and Trent double up? Looks like good value for money if they keep up these numbers. Now going over the worst defenses in the Prem, I'm going to switch up the stat and go over expected goals conceded, because I don't care they're losing their clean sheet, I want to see how many goals they're conceding. So at the top there, no, not Ipswich, who had Man City and Liverpool back-to-back, it's actually Everton at 2.38. So you guys would have seen in that Bournemouth fixture, Bournemouth largely for the game weren't involved, but then Everton conceded 3 goals in the last few minutes. So as a Rodgers owner, I'm super happy to see this. I just hope that he starts and gets me some points, as Everton can't seem to defend at the moment. We then have Ipswich, West Ham, Southampton, Newcastle, and finally Crystal Palace. If Henderson can keep on making saves, he's going to rack up those bonus points. The one team I want to focus on is going to be West Ham, actually, because Fulham do face them this week, and I'm also going to take out Muniz for someone like a João Pedro. So should I actually think about this again, with that West Ham defense has been conceding quite a lot of XG, but Fulham's attacking numbers aren't that great as well. Southampton also a team to definitely target. We saw this against Brentford. So if you do have a Bruno Fernandes still in your team, maybe just keep him. So definitely these teams, target them for captaincy as well as for your attackers, unless it's of course Muniz, who I'm probably going to sell. Now these stats were from Fantasy Football Fix. You guys can go over to their Opta Stats sandbox. They've got every stat, but quite a small sample size to start off the season. Now the more important numbers and the more exciting ones are the projections for Game Week 4, the clean sheet odds, as well as the projected goals. So let's switch things up and go over the defensive numbers first. Let's look at all 10 fixtures. So once again, if you guys are new to this kind of channel or this video, the green fixtures are the top 5, we then go to the grey ones, the pink ones, and finally maroon, just sticking to the FPL rankings for fixtures. So definitely the top 2 teams at the moment, Liverpool and Man City, to keep a clean sheet, and they follow closely by Brighton, Aston Villa, and Crystal Palace. So could this be the week that we actually do keep a clean sheet from Henderson? Fingers crossed that actually happens. Now if you like myself and looking at a kind of defensive option that's quite cheap, Dunk vs Konza was a debate I'm having. So quite close projections here for Brighton as well as Aston Villa, and considering that Aston Villa have better medium-term fixtures, I might go for Konza. But let's see what happens in this upcoming game week. Game week 3 had hardly any clean sheets, maybe game week 4 will have a few more. Now the teams to avoid are going to be Brentford against Man City of course, Nottingham Forest against Liverpool, and then you have Ipswich, Leicester, and Everton, who have really bad defensive numbers. So I'm pretty sure that no one will own those defenses for Game Week 4, and we'll see how that translates into projected goals in the upcoming talking point. Other than them though, we've got some medium level projections for clean sheets. United with 30% is okay, but not many people own United defenders. The game I'm focusing on is probably Spurs vs Arsenal. So for my team, it might be a debate of Pedro Porro vs Gabriel, and Arsenal have the better projected odds as expected. Now I guess the big debate is, can Pedro Porro overtake Gabriel because he has an increased attacking threat? Might be quite close though. I think what kind of edges it for me is the fact that Declan Rice is suspended for this one, so currently favouring Pedro Porro slightly. Another one I spoke about, Fulham vs West Ham, both teams probably going to concede, as with Newcastle and Wolves. Quite interested to see that Chelsea's projection is actually pretty low, 21%, which backs up the fact that Bournemouth have great attacking numbers this season. We also spoke about the fact that Man United, if you want to keep a Bruno Fernandes, that might be viable. Southampton with a pretty low projection of 14%. But you guys can pause the screen if you want to absorb the information. I'm just happy to see that Crystal Palace are going to be hopefully Henderson does well, and fingers crossed we finally get a Trent attacking return. Now probably from a more exciting point of view, let's go over the projected goals for Game Week 4. This is from the SpreadX data. So the odds will change from now to the game week deadline. I might do a refresher if the numbers do change a lot. So quite an initial view at the odds. Now this week, interesting enough, the color rating is exactly the same as the clean sheet odds. with Man City at the top with 3.00. They follow closely by Liverpool at 2.8, and then we have Brighton, Aston Villa and Crystal Palace. So like with Henderson, as an Eze owner, this is nice to see, but does make you want to go for someone like a João Pedro, as Brighton have a good projection. Now Salah vs Haaland yet again is going to be a debate that you guys might want to have, but just a reminder, Haaland does have a bigger goal share out of those 3 projected goals. What Salah does make up for though is the clean sheet point as well as the extra point per goal, and offers more of an assisting threat at the moment. Also with Aston Villa, if you guys have an Ollie Watkins, as long as he's not injured, but I think it's probably an international break injury, let's see if Rodgers can shine. Now teams to avoid, once again Nottingham Forest, if you guys have a Chris Wood, might want to bench him, but he has been pretty consistent in terms of goal scoring. Then Leicester, Ipswich, Brentford and finally Everton, if you guys have brought Mbeumo in, you can always bench him for a better option. There is always a chance though for a ghost goal, especially against Man City. Edison is between the sticks of course. Now as a Muniz owner, looking at that kind of Fulham 1.6 compared to Brighton's 2.4 does tempt me to make the switch. Going back to that North London derby, Spurs vs Arsenal, Spurs with a high projection, as expected, as that Arsenal attack is just better. Both teams though projected a score in this one, so kind of dreading starting either defensive option, and then we have some other teams in that kind of grey area. So those teams are United, Newcastle as well as Chelsea, and I'd probably suggest keeping whichever assets you guys do own. For myself, it's going to be someone like an Isaac. I do back him to actually do well against this poor Wolves defense, and actually prefer keeping him and downgrading one of my defenders to afford Salah. But like with the clean sheets, you guys can pause this super useful information for your planning, captaincy, team selection, as well as transfers. This is a very initial view though. If the week does progress, there's an injury to a big name, these numbers might change, just keep that in mind. But hopefully these 2 numbers have given you enough information to make those Game Week 4 decisions. I use these every single game week. Now the next talking point to go over is a pretty big one, and it's when to wildcard. So a lot of people have been asking me over on Twitter as well as Discord, when do I plan to wildcard? So at the current moment, I don't really have a wildcard plan. What I will tell you though is Game Week 6 is the minimum I'll use it. I think I'm past using it in Game Week 4. Now if you guys don't know, you have to use your first wildcard before the end of the year, and that's around Game Week 20. So from now till Game Week 20, you guys can use it whenever you want, but I think most people will plan it around the premium squads. So the 3 teams I'm going to talk about are Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool, so let's bring up their fixtures. Now the reason I'm talking about these 3 sides is I do kind of believe that most people plan their wildcard around the fixture swings, and it will be around these more expensive players. So on screen you guys can see from Game Week 4 to Game Week 20 for these 3 teams. We're going to use the FPL ratings, but they can sometimes not be great. So just for graphical reasons, I'm going to put these ratings on the screen, as they do the job in terms of showing you guys the sea of greens and the tough fixtures. So you guys can see Game Week 4 is when Arsenal have Spurs and Man City back to back. Then in Game Week 5 and Game Week 6 you guys can see Man City have Arsenal plus Newcastle, but the Newcastle game should be a little bit low in my opinion. You guys have just seen those Newcastle numbers aren't looking good, so I expect Man City to do quite well. Arsenal also have a tough run from Game Week 9 to Game Week 11, but probably only the Liverpool fixture I would avoid. That's why if you guys saw my wildcard draft, I actually have a premium from all of these teams, as I don't really feel like any of them actually have a bad fixture run. Now what I want to highlight though is going to be Game Week 6, because that's a pretty kind of popular week it looks like for the wildcard, and that's because Arsenal have a fixture swing against Leicester and Southampton. So the current mindset is going to be taking out those Arsenal assets, your Sakas, your Gabriels at the moment, and then using the wildcard in Game Week 6 to bring them back in your squad, and getting 3 lovely fixtures. What you guys can also do then is target the Man City options, as from Game Week 7 onwards, they also look strong, whereas Liverpool hit a little bit of a grey area. So I'm pretty sure on the Game Week 6 wildcard we'll see a switch up from Liverpool to Arsenal, and that's understandable with these lovely fixtures. Now after that, we do have some other kind of fixture swings, maybe around Game Week 12-14, but they're not really that clear cut, and that's why the Game Week 6 one kind of makes sense. The other added bonus is you'll get 1 Champions League game before the wildcard to see how all of these teams do address the Champions League. With Liverpool, will we see Jota benched or Salah reduced minutes? You might be able to tell that from that 1 Champions League game. I will say that I do personally prefer the Game Week 6 wildcard to the Game Week 4 wildcard, but I'm not 100% locked in. I kind of feel like it'll be a natural process when I look at my squad and I think I need the wildcard. I don't really feel like that at the moment. Just not a lot of information has come about over these 3 weeks, and I want to see how the Champions League progresses, and that's why Game Week 6 is at a minimum for me. But comment down below, is there another logic that you guys are using to decide when to wildcard? It's quite hard to plan from medium or long-term approach, but you can always pick it out depending on the fixtures. In previous seasons, what I've actually done is used it as late as possible around the December period, because just remember, we have this kind of mystery chip that's still up in the air. So maybe if it's announced in January, you can wildcard late in December, and then use the mystery chip early January. That could be a viable strategy, depending on what the chip is. But I just want to put this debate out there. As mentioned, I've had a load of questions. Game Week 6 looks pretty strong, otherwise I don't really know when I'm going to use it. Now the last talking point to go over is all about the Camsey debate, and this week it's probably down to two people. That's Erling Haaland as well as Mo Salah. So you guys can actually see that Fix has a high projected points for Salah at the moment, 8.3 compared to 7.9. Now luckily this week is the week of home fixtures, Forest at home for Salah and Brentford at home for Haaland. Now currently for me it's an easy one. I only have Erling Haaland, so he's my captain, but I think both are very viable options. The one thing to note though is that Nottingham Forest defense has been slightly improved, but I still expect Mo Salah to do well. Just kind of who do you think does better out of these two, and that's why I'm edging Haaland at the moment. Now if you guys do want to go for an outside punch, you go for someone like an Eze against Leicester at home. Slightly low projections though. Now his stats look pretty strong, but I think that you guys definitely should go for either Salah or Haaland. Unless you're absolutely maverick, then you can go for Eze. I don't think I've missed out on another option that you guys might be looking at. I know Saka has very strong kind of numbers against Spurs, so could come back to bite those who take him out for Salah. But comment down below who's your captain for the upcoming game week. If you guys have Salah and Haaland, it's quite a tough debate, and that's why it might actually be better just to own one of them. But that's going to wrap up this ultimate guide. As mentioned, I'm recording this a little bit earlier on. There might be talking points as we progress, just wait for those press conferences, as this might not be the end of those international break injuries. But I'll see you guys for a refresher of the team selection coming up closer to the deadline, where I'll discuss all the latest news. But this is basically going to wrap the video, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you have subscribed yet. As mentioned, team selection coming up, so make sure those notifications are turned on. But for the time being, I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL and I'm out. Cheers, bye.